All righty, folks. Here we are today. We got a good one for you. Welcome to the Mapping Your AI and Marketing Success podcast. My name is Greg Goshorn. I am your host, and we are so glad to have you with us and our guests that we'll get right to. Look, this thing is all about helping businesses, all kinds of businesses, brick and mortar, online, franchise, anyone that's spreading the word. So here's some of the things that they've done. Maybe they'll work for you, get some inspiration. So we would invite you to come on, share your story. We're going to hear some from Chris today. AI victories, business victories, products, services, and with the marketing hat, especially more than just the features and benefits, the transformation of your customers, because that's really the value proposition. So without further ado, joining us today is Chris Monroe. He's relatively new in my long-standing network, but I'm not going to lie, we hit it off right away. I love his style, his knowledge, his depth, his focus, and he's got kind of a deep portfolio. But I'll let him tell you a little bit about it. But he's a keynote speaker. He's a fractional COO. He's a business coach. He could speak extemporaneously. We're lucky he's got a voice today after they threw him up in front of a large audience last night. So welcome, Chris. I'll let you tell your story better than I do.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. I appreciate the intro. Like you said, since we've met, it's been an amazing conversation, amazing kind of getting to know each other. But more importantly, there's this authenticity that you bring to the table that I'm truly thankful to be a part of. And I think that, when two people, two like minds come together and kind of collaborate, there becomes this third higher mind, this mastermind of consensus. And I think since meeting you, we've both been able to pull from that and then, just really foster a great conversation and a great connection. So I'm truly thankful for that. And I'm thankful to be a part of this podcast and, share some of my experiences with your audience. So with that said, I always like to start off with a little bit of sharing of, how I got here, where I came from, because I appreciate that the best speakers that I've ever heard, the best leaders I've ever been a part of, were willing to share their story and the why they are who they are. So for me, I started off as a young kid that really had never thought about being an entrepreneur until one day my father handed me a newspaper and asked me to read an article about college and told me that's where you're going to be in 10 years. But I saw this E word at the top of the page I'd never seen before. And I said, enter, entree. I said, Dad, what does this word mean? And he said, entrepreneur. And I said, that's what I'm going to be. I like everything that's in that article. He goes, no, you're going to be in college. Read the article about college. And, like the stubborn kid I was, I had a plan for myself. The plan didn't always work out in the way that he wanted it to, but always worked out for me in the way I wanted to long term. So I stuck with that, but still went to college. I went to college as on a football scholarship, but I was a computer engineer. I was like the geek and the nerd of the football team, of a college football team at somewhat of a party school. That, as you can imagine, probably didn't go well. I learned how to party better than I learned how to be a good student, and probably decided that, partying was more fun than being a student. So I failed out. And as a college dropout, it was one of those things where, like, where am I going to go in life? What am I going to do? I said, well, I'm good at this computer thing. So I went to tech school, ended up finding I loved, and I was, great at working computers. But what I quickly realized was I wasn't so much great at any one thing computer-wise, but I was great at understanding systems and how to plan and how to execute and deliver large projects from a very young age in terms of experience within the IT world. That transitioned quickly as I climbed the ladder. I got to a very successful point. I was hired. Actually, my football jersey number was number 72, and I was the 72nd interview, landing my first dream job as an IT manager for a fast-growing software development company here in Charlotte, North Carolina. In the year and a half I was with that company, I really strengthened my leadership style, my leadership skills, and I didn't have to be a technology guy. I got to be an operations person. I got to take the systems, create the systems. We leveraged objectives and key results as a company and adopted that as a philosophy. I created an entire management style around that. In the year and a half I was there, we went from the worst department in the company to the best department in the company,
Boom.
all while absorbing a new company, and I had to do a technical evaluation and present that to our private equity firm. We expanded across the country with that company into from just one centralized office to 7 across the East Coast. At the same time, we were starting an office across the pond, as they would say in England, in a shared workspace over there. So I had to figure out how to get my team had to figure out how to get computers installed and set up over there, having never
Ooh,
seen the
that's a
machine
lot of moving pieces, buddy. Oh my
Right, yeah,
gosh.
so we did that. On top of that, we were moving from a office space we were leasing in the north end of Charlotte down into the downtown, just south of the they called Uptown area in Charlotte, and converting a old mill warehouse into an open office workspace. When I got there, we said, "Well, we're moving in 6 months." The first day I toured that workspace, I said, "This is about a year away." And they looked at me like I was crazy. I said, "No, this is a year away. We don't even have cabling. We don't have networking. We have nothing." So while facilitating that project, taking on a facilities role as well as IT leadership role, we did all of that, moved the company in a weekend and did not miss a beat.
Oof.
And what it came down to was having a strong structure in planning, operational guidance, using objectives and key results, and guiding the company. Funny enough, I was moving into a position where I was training other managers. And on the way to work to go train other managers on how I accomplished all of that, what some people would consider tragedy struck. And I was rear ended, sitting at a red light on my way to work by some random person.
Oh
Now,
no.
having played college football and high school football back in the era when they called concussions, you just got your bell rung and you get back in there. That was my 7th concussion. And for most people, it would have been just, a little whiplash hit to the head. You'd have been fine. But for me, that put me on long-term disability, took me out of the workforce, and I
Ooh.
never delivered that presentation. A few years later, I'm sitting at home and I'm frustrated, thinking like, "You're not disabled. You're still capable. You still can overcome this. What can you do that combines all of your skills, everything that you love into one thing?" And that's where Ops Framework was born. It was born out of my passion for creating operational systems. It was born out of my passion for using technology to solve the problems businesses had. And I leveraged that into a skill set and a business that I now call Ops Framework. That stands for Operate, Plan, Scale Framework. And that's really the foundation, the crux of how I got here, why I'm here, and where my passion for helping other businesses grow and thrive came from, because I was already doing it in corporate America. That one-to-one just didn't make sense to me. And there's still that kid inside that learned what that entrepreneur word was and is determined to make that my reality going forward. So thank you for allowing me to share that, Greg. And I think that's, hopefully that's a little motivational for your future entrepreneurs, and, just a reminder for you current entrepreneurs that are struggling through the weeds of everything, that, hey, if I can do it coming from legitimate disability, you can too.
Oh, I tell you what, I didn't know that about you, and I appreciate that. I love everybody's character arc, you know, and the story means so much. And I know some of your influences. Les, gotta love Les, right?
Yeah.
Les Brown. For
Les
those who
Brown.
don't
Yeah.
know, if you don't know him, go Google Les
You should
Brown.
look. I was in the days of Les Brown where I had the booklet of cassette tapes,
Ooh,
and I would listen to those cassette
we're
tapes.
of a certain age. I'm of a certain
Yeah,
age.
if you're of a certain age, right? You may not even know what a cassette tape is, but I took those cassette tapes to college, and I actually brought a Walkman to college so I could listen to those cassette tapes
Oh,
walking to and from class, because I was not motivated to be a good college student. Those tapes got me through more than you could ever imagine.
Les
And
is so
fast
great,
forward to
man.
2017, I had the opportunity to train and speak with Les Brown, which is where the speaker in me was born. So
Oh,
it's funny how they say, be careful meeting your heroes. I had to be careful meeting my hero, because it became an obsession for me at that point in time that I'm truly thankful for, and I'll never put down ever again.
I
So
love
meet your
that.
heroes, but realize that it may change something inside of you that you're not ready for, and just hold on for the ride, because from that moment forward, things will change.
Man, it is great. It is great to me. I've got some pictures with him over the
Mhm.
years. I never got the chance to work with him too close, but he's come to a bunch of meetings that some of my other associates have had him on, and I've shared some time with him.
Mhm.
Anyways, so many good things, but really today we want to learn a little bit more about you
Mhm.
and your business and some of your perspective, and then again, the marketer and me, and the design of the platform. At the end, I know that Chris has got something to share with the audience. We all come with a servant's heart. But let's dig in here. We love that level set on the beginning. But one thing you talk about is failure is not a setback; it's a learning opportunity, which I love. And so, do you have a time? I mean, you already kind of told us one, but maybe a different time where it became a big breakthrough for you.
Yeah. I think I there's a few things I always like to say about failure. First, to fail is the first attempt in learning, and you've got to fail multiple times to figure out the right way to do something. I think the biggest failure of my life, and I used to look at this as something to hold my head down on. Now I hold my head up with pride. I was given a full football scholarship. I didn't have to pay for college. I went to college with the idea of, hey, this is all going to be free. All you got to do is play football. Of course, this was before the NIL. There was no extra money. In fact, I got a job in the computer suite my freshman year, and I had to quit when they found out I was working there because you couldn't make extra money from the school if you were on full scholarship. So fail is the first attempt in learning. And what I did well in college was facilitate connections with people, facilitate groups of friends. I had a group of friends that I'm still connected with then, but I failed at college. And if I would have just looked at that failure as a permanent thing, I would have never had the courage to get out of the weeds, get out of doing the mundane gym, working at a gym, working at group homes, working at jobs that just had no future. And I would have never taken that step to go to tech school and start my IT career. In fact, once I realized that if I can overcome being a college dropout and eventually get to the point of leadership, I can prove to other people that first failure that you're looking at as something that held you back in the past is really an opportunity and a setup for your greatest success ever in the future. So realizing that if you fail, it's just a temporary setback, but it's really there for you to learn from, to figure out where your success truly lies and how you're going to get there as a person.
Ooh, solid. Hard to think of in the moment, but surely a great perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And here's the thing that I've learned, and you mentioned thinking about it in the moment. One of the things I've learned is your first reaction is always an emotional reaction. That's okay. That's fine. But what makes you different from the past version of yourself that's transitioning to the future version of yourself is how you react differently after you get through that emotion. So when you have the reaction to the failure, when you're experiencing something that went wrong, take a step and have the emotional reaction, but don't take it out on anyone else. Don't project it onto anyone else. Realize it's your emotions that are sometimes tied to a belief system that you may have that you need to break down, and then figure out what the opportunity is to learn. Some people say, hey, give yourself 15 seconds, give 15 minutes, 15 days, whatever it is. As a football player, we always say you give yourself 24 hours to mourn the loss of the game, and then you get right back to it the next day. And I truly believe in that habit. Give myself 24 hours. Be kind to yourself. Be forgiving. Allow yourself to experience the emotional impact of that failure, but then still remember there's a learning opportunity in every failure that can catapult you forward. If Edison stopped at the first failure of the light bulb, we still wouldn't have light bulbs today, or maybe we'd have some type of other fancy candle. But he failed 1,000 times before he figured out how to do it right. Use that as the basis for your success, because you're not going to succeed the first time unless you just have the entire blueprint and you execute it perfectly. But the reality is you've still got to learn how to be even more successful beyond that blueprint, because no blueprint's going to work twice. And if it does, you're never going to reach the original success of the person that created that blueprint.
Ooh, good stuff. Yeah, it's that centering in the moment is for me. There's a fictional coach on Apple TV, and he says, "Be a goldfish." And he also says,
Yep.
"Take the time in the moment in the locker room." For your sports analogy, like take your time, but then move on.
Yep.
Good points on how to take a failure into an opportunity. So some of the other stuff that you talk about is bottlenecks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your systems approach is really great. I think that and you and people like you and myself, the external people to an environment can see things that people in it can't see, right? And so you
Mhm.
probably have some things about bottlenecks, maybe in your own business, and maybe it's you not trusting the team to run without you. Any thoughts on that one?
So that's an interesting concept because there's several ways bottlenecks can form. And the first thing I say is, you know, when you're working with a team, there's someone that I call the information hoarder, where they view their value as the information that they have in their head and the information they own themselves. And that can then lead to a significant bottleneck. Now, that may be the leader of the company, that may be the first person they hired, that may be the third person they hired that just, feels like they have to prove their worth to the company. But the ultimate reality is anytime someone is hoarding information, not documenting it, not sharing it, not broadcasting it to the group so that there's actionable items or operating procedures or smoother workflow can happen, you start creating a bottleneck right there. And I think fundamentally, that's important for owners and founders to learn as well. Because let's face it, we all, as entrepreneurs, decide to get into a business because of one of two things. We wanted to make more money or we wanted more time. But usually what ends up happening is we start making the money and our time disappears. And we think that if we work harder and hustle harder and bring in a few people, but keep that hustle and grind going, that we're going to find one day to magically have all of this time. The reality is the same thinking that created that problem for you is the same thinking that's stopping you from fixing that problem. So when you start identifying that, hey, maybe I'm the information hoarder, maybe I'm the one that's stopping the growth from happening, and hold yourself accountable first, because as a leader, that's your job. Hold yourself accountable for what's working and not working. But then you have to take a step back and say, how could my team function better? How can my team work better? Now, if you have a hiring problem, that's one thing. You've got to really iron out the true uh, the vision of your company and the type of person that will help you execute that vision. If you've solved that and you've got great people, but it's still not growing and scaling and just everyone's coming to you for everything, it's time to take a step back and figure out what things can I offload to them. A good friend of mine said the lowest the lowest cost employee that's capable of making the best decision possible should be handling that decision, or the highest impact decision. So if you've got an entry level person that can make simple entry level decisions that they're coming to you for to make those decisions, your job is to train them, create the procedures, create the outlines, create the SOWs, whatever it is, give them the SLAs for the time frame, give them the procedures that you use, the documentation that you use. Heck, you can even create an AI version of yourself with your knowledge base that they can then reference to ping the virtual you on how to solve these problems.
Ooh, now you're talking my language right here, buddy. I
Exactly. That's why I
mean,
brought
that's how
it
you get there's some jargon in there, SLAs and KPIs and stuff, but for people, it's like, help people
Yep.
do the things without you, and that way you get yourself out of the bottleneck. Is that what
Yeah.
I'm hearing?
Yeah, definitely. So,
Okay.
the thing is, if you are the central point for every decision that's being made, you are the bottleneck.
You're doing
You're
it wrong.
someone that's in the way of your own success. So
Gotcha.
it's definitely something that I think we should all look at. If every decision has to flow through you, if every customer communication has to flow through you for your approval, if you're getting emails that say seeking your approval on, you are the bottleneck. You should be
Ooh,
allowing
that's a
your
good
people.
tell.
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
tell.
If everyone's
All
asking
right.
the same questions over and over again, it's time to start relinquishing that and figure out how you can leverage AI to solve that problem. There's a hundred, what they say, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat or skin, whatever it is. But
Yep.
find the ones that offload the work and empower your employees. That has twofold on your team. Your team feels more empowered, and you're building a stronger dynamic that will make people want to stay longer because they feel like they're getting smarter and being given more responsibility.
Ooh, that's you hit the nail on the head on a lot of the places on where we start in getting lift and
Mhm.
value for AI deployments for an organization.
Absolutely.
You might have seen that the MIT study where like only 5% of them succeeded. Well, the 95% of them that failed was just poor planning and poor ideas. You don't take AI, you know, and throw it at something. You start with a fundamental
Mhm.
business issue or challenge or something that could be delegatable and
Mhm.
repeatable, and then you use AI for that.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what I say? A lot of people are using AI. I equate it to the contractor. If a contractor showed up to build a deck for you, and they showed up with a tape measure and a hammer, and said, "All right, I'm going to build a deck with these two things," you'd look at them like they were crazy. You'd probably think that you were scammed, and you'd figure out how to get out of that as quickly as possible. The reality is, so many people are using AI in the wrong way. They're showing up like a contractor without the right tools. Now, if a contractor shows up with a whole toolbox and they roll that into your backyard, it's got a circular saw, it's got a tape measure, it's got everything you need, it's got
Right.
string to do the leveling, they got everything. You're gonna look at them and say, "Wow, that's an important that's a smart contractor. They know what they're doing, and they're going to build me a great deck." You got to use AI the same way. You have to show up as the knowledgeable contractor that knows the tools they need and figure out how to use each tool properly to solve individual problems for your company. A saw doesn't solve the same problem a hammer does, nor does a
Sure.
hammer solve the same problem that a saw solves. Figure out where you can use the AI to put those solutions in place, and watch your company succeed accordingly.
And that's what we do. We come right alongside business owners, maybe a CAIO, right?
Yeah.
To use some more jargon, folks. Yeah, Chief AI, Artificial Intelligence Officer.
I think
Um,
that's going to be a role in the future.
it
It
is.
has to be.
We wear that hat. I need to get one of those hats. Anyways, let's keep rolling here. The other thing that I like about what you talk about is confusing busy with being productive.
Mm,
And I'm I'm one. We're turning it over to the new year here. This thing is filmed on Jan 2026 here,
mhm.
so I'm thinking about my days and my weeks. And so, how do you help leaders identify like which things move the needle compared to checking boxes? How you got a thought on that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's really having worked in IT departments that were always busy but never getting things done. I would have to take a step back and look, like, I feel like I'm living the definition of insanity. We're running on a hamster wheel with our, just unable to solve anything, but it's not getting done. And that's really the crux of where the operate, plan, scale framework came from. You know, as a coach, fractional COO, I sit down with business owners and I listen to what they're doing. I listen to what their goals are versus what their actions are. And
Ooh.
oftentimes, when you're looking at something from the outside, you can easily spot these actions don't align with these goals. These actions take a lot of work and they eat up a lot of time, but the goals are never being accomplished. So there's a great mismatch between those two. And one of the things that I love working and helping my customers use is setting up objectives and key results. It's called OKRs for short. That's something that I think truly, when you create a management structure around that, you can still use KPIs and SMART goals and all of those things, but feed it through this structure first, because then your team is empowered to win. So leveraging the idea of an objective is setting that high level goal, creating the goal that matters in your company. And then from that goal, you have three key results. They're measurable. There's something that you can say, "Hey, in 3 months, I've done this much work to this key result." So maybe we'll talk about sales, right? That's a good way to start. Everyone needs sales, and you have a sales goal. Maybe it's a number goal, maybe it's a quantity goal, whatever it is. But one of the key results in that sales will be, how many new prospects that I talked to this week. So your key result one would be, maybe I need to reach out and contact, whether it's cold contact, warm contact, 20 new contacts per week. The next key result that I would look at is, how many meetings do I have? Not sales calls. How many sit downs do I need to have, whether it's virtual or in person, after work, whatever it is? How many people do I need to look eye to eye to discover if they're a potential customer? Maybe you set 5 to 7 of those a week. And then you say, well, how many new customers am I expecting per month, per week, whatever it is, and set that goal. Because if you're looking to onboard 20 new clients in a quarter, you're going to have a number of clients that you need to onboard either weekly or monthly to reach that goal. And from there, you're able to look at your actions. In fact, I have my customers create action item lists so that they're taking care. And each one of those key results is going to have 3 action items per, that they can look at. And then you can take that and plug it into your calendar and start planning out your
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
You
working
know,
backwards, and this
yeah,
is things that
you're
meet the things that move the needle.
Exactly.
Oh,
And the whole point of using the OKRs is that you set them to be ambitious. You set them to be a little scary and intimidating, but also allow yourself to realize that if I fall short, then it's time to figure out why I fell short. So often people are working, 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 and they're not looking at the action and how it matches to the goal. And when you take your action items and you start looking at those, I spent this much time doing this, I spent this much time doing that, I spent this much time doing that, you start to realize that, hey, I wasn't working towards the goal 50% of the time. I was just working on random things that did not align with this goal. So the reason I missed this goal is because I got sidetracked with busy work that didn't reach this goal. What's the solution we do there? We either need to hire someone, put a VA in place, put an automation that's AI driven in place, or delegate to someone else that we can trust and figure out how we're going to do that. But that gives us the leverage to grow and scale, which is where that scaling portion comes from, because then we're assessing on a weekly basis how quickly we're getting to reach, how quickly we're moving forward to our goals versus what's stopping us from reaching that level of success. So it's so important to allow yourself to miss the mark, but then figure out why you missed the mark and
oh.
then adjust and move forward with the next quarter of OKRs, knowing that you missed the mark for something else. You know what? I'm going to shoot even higher this quarter because now I know what was in my way and now I know how to succeed.
Well, folks, if you can't tell, this guy's got it down. He's got a framework, and it just brings in all of just the rock solid strategic and tactical things of setting goals, of measuring, of analyzing, of replanning. It's probably, I use flywheel a lot in my terminology, right? But it's the whole idea of doing all of that.
Mhm.
I want to keep going here. I know any one of these could be a whole episode, and we probably have some future things, if not on this podcast, but some collaborative work together. So, you also talk about um, limiting beliefs and invisible barriers, right?
Mhm.
And so, a lot of and you've said this kind of in the beginning. The leader is in charge, and he sort of is doing a good job as driving the ship. But then you got to get in his head, you know. And so, what do you think is out there? It's like common beliefs, and how do you get them past that?
Well, I always start with a simple concept. The reality is this is something I learned, 20 plus years ago, 25 years ago. Your beliefs, that's who you are. That's your like foundation, right? But your beliefs create your thoughts, right? You start thinking based on your belief system. If you believe that you will never own a business, you're going to do everything in your power to think that, hey, I'm not going to own a business. But your thoughts, they create your words. So when you're working in corporate America or you're owning a job, you're going to say, hey, one of the struggles I had in corporate America was I'm surrounded by people that didn't believe they could do more. So it was all of their conversation was around how do they hold on to this job and how do they be the best employee? How do they function in this way? And, you're not going to do it. If you do it that way, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Don't go out on a limb, right? And your thoughts create the outcomes and your actions. And that's really where you have to start. You've got to realize that if we fast track understanding our beliefs, create our actions. There's beliefs, the thoughts, the words, the actions. And I've never found that to be out of alignment with anyone. That is always the truth. The reality is, we have these things we think we want. We want more money. We want a better job. We want a career. We want a business. We want employees. We want these things. But there are beliefs that are limiting our actions.
Oh
So a
boy,
lot of times
preach.
I'm listening. Thank you. I'm listening to business owners say they want to make more money. And then I listen to the things that they're saying that contradict that desire. So I asked them, what is it that you believe that aligns with what you're saying? What are your experiences in life? What have they created for you that allow you to believe that? And one of the things I'll hear people say is, well, I just don't think I can get that. I just don't think it's real. I just don't think. So, well, what if I told you that that's just a belief that's based in fear? And a belief based in fear is just false evidence appearing real. That's what fear is. So when you realize that that is then classified as a limiting belief, Any belief based in fear is a limiting belief that's stopping you from reaching the outcomes and the actions that you want. It's time to start addressing that. Now, I'm not a therapist. I often say, everyone should have a therapist and a coach to get them to where they want to go. The therapist is going to help you address your belief systems. The coach is going to help you break those apart and conquer things that are in your way. But sometimes those limiting beliefs are what we use to create that wonderful box we call the comfort zone. You've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because when you start challenging those limiting beliefs that are holding you back from getting where you want to go. In fact, I hear imposter syndrome is something that I often quite identify with people with it, because they believe they can't. When they step into it, they feel like they're the imposter. And you've got to really help someone understand that, hey, if you think of something in your imagination, that's the true authentic version of you trying to poke out and say, hey, this is who I am. Let me be this person. You've got to then be strong enough to step outside of your comfort zone, address, tackle, and work on those limiting beliefs, and start finding new versions of yourself that align with the actions, outcomes you want. I have a belief matrix I work on with people where we write down the beliefs, we write down the exact opposite, and we write down all of the evidence and why it's not true. And we start figuring out, why can't you see that evidence as the new belief that you need to have?
That's
And
kind of woo-woo for an ops guy right
it
there, but I
is.
love it. It's
And you know
foundational.
what? It's the foundation of who I am. It's the reason that I got off of my butt from being disabled. I did a limiting belief matrix for myself. Woo woo or not, it works. So
Oh,
if woo woo stands for works, then I am all about woo woo, because woo woo works. So
I'm with you, man. You could just
it's
say, you could just hear the Les Brown and the self improvement and the motivation
yeah.
coming through, because it's really clear. And we're in the home stretch here. We're gonna bring it home. The It all works together, like the
Yeah.
person, the beliefs, the business, the home, the spiritual, the health. I mean, it's all kind of part and parcel. And I love how you have a systemic approach
Mhm.
rather than being micro in procedures,
Mhm. Yeah.
which is one thing I really like about you, Chris.
Thank you.
Well, folks, we're gonna have to bring this guy back. Um, or
Happy to come
start
back.
our own podcast, or I don't know what we're doing. Look for some collaboration here. You're going to start to see Chris's stuff and some of my content, and maybe vice versa. But I don't want to let us get out of here. And I literally ask every person, and to a person so far, if they have any kind of gift or something for the audience, right? And most of these people are servant leaders, and so do you have something like that for us today?
Actually, I do. I've got quite a few things, but I think the one thing I wanted to share with the audience today is going to be my fractional COO playbook. A lot of people hear fractional this, fractional that. They don't really know what that means. Well, I've created a playbook that if you read it, you'll get a good understanding of what a fractional is and how it can help your company. And one of the things that I really focus on is, you know, a lot of people think they need a new manager or to hire a new employee, when they really just need someone, 5 to 8 hours a week to come in and make significant changes in their business that will help them grow, scale, and get to the next level. That's a good playbook to start with. If you read that playbook and you feel like, man, I don't know if I'm ready for a fractional CO, that sounds intimidating. That's why I offer coaching, because a lot of times there are companies out there that need that mindset. They just need it for an hour a week. They need someone to coach them up and start putting those processes in place. And I'll help you grow, get to the point where you do need a fractional. And that's really the crux of what I am. I love helping people, whether you're a startup or a seasoned multi-million-dollar business. I've got something that can help you grow, scale, and take your business to the next level and remove the bottlenecks along with not increasing the extra workload on your leadership team. In fact, I reduce the workload on your leadership team.
I'm
So
going to go
helping help
get
there.
that right after we get off, man. It is great. Well, look, we're here, man. Thank you, Chris, first of all. Thank you, folks, for joining us. What a great show. We love our guests. And frankly, we'd love to have you come on, right? We could feature you. We could feature your story, your business right down here, mappingyourmarketing.com/podcast. You can register, start the process. And with that in mind, we are going to sign off. look for new things. This is going to be, we've got a little distribution matrix. So it's going to be on channels. It's going to be on websites. It's going to be syndicated and optimized on YouTube. We'll probably make some clips out of here. So go get them, folks. Thanks, Chris.
Appreciate it, Greg. Thank you very much for having me.